Welcome back to Superliminal, and my guest today is Katie Bishop, otherwise known as earthbishop.com. We have such a lovely conversation and cover. I mean, it was one of those conversations that, could have been like an all-day workshop. There's so much important information to cover, but it was just lovely. A really connected, lovely, but powerful conversation. I mean, some of the things we discussed the disclosure wars, as in ET disclosure, activating our supernatural ability of our souls, which is I used as the title of the slide, because most of us don't realize that we actually do inherently have natural superpowers. We talked about the feminine energy that's coming into this realm, and also briefly touched on transhumanism, the false matrix system, and the importance of self-connection and energetic hygiene. Yeah, it's a really lovely conversation. And if you want to know a bit more about Katie and what she does, she's actually got an amazing free offer that she shares right at the very end. So if you read the show notes, it'll tell you a little bit more about her, and we'll have a link to her website where, if the conversation resonates with you, you'll be able to make use of the really lovely free offer that she's doing, which I'm actually going to do myself as well. I think it's that good. So thank you everyone, as always, for tuning in and watching. Please do share this episode, comment, like, help the algorithm to get it out to other great people like you who'll really benefit from the wisdom of the great guests on the show, like Katie. And I look forward to seeing you in just a second. Bye for now. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Superliminal. And as you'll have heard from the intro video, I have Katie Bishop with me today. A lovely lady I'd not come across before until our mutual friend Stephanie Butler connected us. And I'm so pleased she did, because off camera, Katie and I have just had the most wonderful preamble. In fact, we were saying I wish we'd recorded it actually, but I'm sure it will come back up again. And I normally do quite a bit of research before each interview, but this time, when we were communicating on email, Katie and I said, "You know what? Let's just be in flow, be in the moment, and see what spirit brings in." Although I did have a quick look at her bio on her website, so I might draw a couple of things in from that. But yeah, Katie, I'm so honored that you wanted to be on the show. Unfortunately, Laura couldn't make it with us today, Laura Eisenhower. But I'm really looking forward to both of you coming back on the show later this year. But still, it's such an honor to have you on. And thank you for wanting to be on the show. So welcome.
Oh, thank you so much, Franco. It's so great to be here. And like you said, I actually learned about you from an interview you did. You were on Stephanie Butler's podcast on conscious heart co-creation, and I listened to that. And Stephanie is a friend of mine, obviously. And I said, wow, this guy Franco is really doing the work. He's holding this space
Oh,
for these really uncomfortable conversations to happen in a safe manner with compassion and grace, because this whole awakening process can be really ugly and it can be really scary. And people want to ask questions, but they're scared. And there's a lot of people who are awake who are maybe a little aggressively, over aggressively trying to wake people up, which is causing more resistance. And the space and the energy that you're providing and that Stephanie provides is so open, and it just feels so gracious. And it doesn't mean that we all have to agree, but it's really important that we bring all of this information together, that we aggregate as much as we can, and then we distill it, and then we filter it, and we see, okay, this piece feels like truth, and this is the part I want to bring forward. And that's going to look different for each person, and that's going to change as each person evolves. Some of the things you hear may not resonate right now, but in 3 years from now, you're going to get it when we look back on who we were, say, 3 years ago, you could have been a different person. You could have been looking at the world from a completely different perspective. So many people have evolved since 2020 on a rapid scale. So your your format, this platform you provide, is just wonderful, and I'm so happy to be here. And I will be back with Laura because Laura and I are on a very similar mission. We kind of are intertwined in our mission. So she's doing a lot of conferences right now, so we'll come back and on another date. But for today, like I said, I love the conversations that just kind of arise organically and they come purely from the heart. And I can talk about anything, all of these supernatural phenomenon, ETs, galactics, disclosure, activating the supernatural abilities of our soul, talking about universal laws, wherever we want to go with this conversation. Will be drawn, to where it needs to go from source creator, but from the voice of our souls. So feel free to ask me whatever you want throughout the conversation, of course. Do you want me to give a little background?
Yeah, I just we did mention a couple of points before we hit the record button, but one of the things you said there, I thought, oh wow, we've so got to draw that out and keep everybody in suspense and ask the question a little bit later. Firstly, Katie, thank you so much for seeing me and what I'm doing and how I'm doing it, because I feel it's very, and I deeply, deeply appreciate that. It really has touched my heart and soul, because I do feel it's so important to provide a platform for people to share their experience, particularly when it's people like I've had a couple of secret space program guests on recently who've been through so much trauma, and it's really important to be able to provide, as you have recognized and seen, and thank you again, a really safe platform for people to be able to share, but also a platform where it's one of the things that I really make a point of is where the host sits back and lets the guest actually do the talking. Because I know on some of the podcasts that I used to really like, I just would stop following because, the host is jumping in too much. Because ultimately, yes, you have to help direct the conversation and draw out what needs to be drawn out. But I think it is really, really important that there is that space where people can just speak from the heart and speak with flow. So I really honestly, I cannot thank you enough for seeing that with me and what I'm doing with Superliminal. It really does mean the world. So yeah, to begin with then, I generally speaking at the beginning will always ask, what can you remember the time just before this incarnation, why you chose to come here? I suspect you will be able to. So tell us then, in that space in the all that is, or wherever it is that you were just before you incarnated as Katie in this life, what what drew you to incarnate at this time as Katie? And I was fascinated to read that in 2011, you were walking. So perhaps for people who don't know what that is, you could explain all of that for us, because I'm super intrigued about that.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I would love to talk about that because the walk-in process is fascinating. And when you talk about my incarnation before this, really, my story is very unique in the sense that I'm a walk-in that has the veil extremely thin because I walked in with no uh, in alignment is what I call it. Typically, well, first, let me back up. Let me explain what a walk-in is. A walk-in soul is one that transfers into a body as another soul is leaving. Now, there's different variations of this, but the walk-in experience for me was this this incarnation, this body, the soul went through a dark night of the soul, left during that. My soul came in completely awake and aware, and what I call a moment of grace. So basically, this happened in 2011. So I explain it as imagine The Wizard of Oz, and Dorothy lands in Oz, and she goes from everything's in black and white. And then all of a sudden she steps out and everything's full color. Because when I walked in, I had full activation, full pineal gland, kundalini, all of those things. I was seeing multidimensionally, and it was really, quite honestly, sensory overload. So that is really my experience. And the nice thing about being a walk-in in that sense is you come in very mission driven and your mission is extremely clear. Now, when I say I'm a walk-in in alignment, I mean this because typically in the walk-in process, the body has to almost be catatonic or almost at a state of death for the soul transference to happen. So this is why it usually happens at near-death experiences. We see a lot of people that go through a near-death experience. Maybe they were clinically dead for a few minutes and then they wake up and they are revived and then they want to save the world. And they're completely, a different person. That's a walk-in. Okay, that's what's happening. I had the experience where I didn't die. It was extremely conscious. And so having that helps clarify what you're doing, because what can happen in a near-death experience is there's recovery time. The body can be damaged and you can lose some of that memory that you come in with. It's almost like being born. And as we're babies and we're little children, we're so mystical, we're so attached to the unseen world, but that fades away. And if you have a near-death experience and you have a lot of recovery time, you start to fade away what your mission is. You start to lose those memories. So walking in, boom, I say that it was like walking in with a briefcase. And I sat down and I was like, okay, here's my mission. This is what I'm going to do. And I set out to do it right away. This was bringing back natural healing abilities. This was activating the human body. This was remembrance for humanity of their divine origins. This is the resurrection of the true feminine principle. So what happened was I started activating my mission and I got completely targeted and taken out. And this includes things like my labs. This includes things like targeted individual programs. I don't want to get into all of that today because that's a whole nother series of information. But that set me back so much so that I found myself in less than a year with completely living out of my car in a motel and having to start my life from scratch. And it took me up until really 2021 to get to a stable place where I was able to focus on the mission, focus on the healing practice, focus on bringing the teachings in. And I do that through my Sacred Mysteries Monthly. I teach a monthly class about those. So I know that was a really long answer, but that kind of gives
Terrific.
you an overview. And I do have this experience, this walk-in experience is fascinating. And I would love other people to understand what it feels like. And I have a book coming out in the fall and I go through it in detail, what it was like and the mechanics of it. And I talk a lot about what goes on behind the veil. And I get more into the targeted individual programming and the My Labs and all of that in the book. But again, for today, I think that's too much to get into.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for that. So that is absolutely fascinating because I've spoken to a couple of people who've had walking experiences, but they have, well, a couple of souls rather, who've become a walking experience into a physical body, but they've been very much what you've described, where there's been both of them have been a near death experience. Both very much working in a starseed and healing capacity, which was what the walking soul came in to do, fully conscious. So it's fascinating that's not actually what happened to you. So do you well, you must do. Before the walk in, then what was your soul consciousness and soul awareness doing, and where was that, and what made you choose to come and work with Mother Gaia at this point in her evolution and the evolution of humanity?
Yeah, so leading up to that, well, first of all, it's important to understand that when there's a benevolent soul transference happening, it's planned out pre-incarnation. So this isn't like a hijacking or a takeover or anything. This was orchestrated and it was a strategic plan. there was a fleet of us that walked in 2011 for the 2012 timeline convergence, for the shift of the ages. So this was extremely there behind the veil. This was all planned out very strategically. It's almost an operation in a sense. So before leading up to the transference, this happened right before I turned 33, and I was going through a lot of personal healing. I was doing my own shadow work. I was going through my childhood traumas, and I was uncovering the ego. And I realized, oh my gosh, I've lived my life making decisions based out of fear. I've compromised my true self to fit in, or going down career paths that didn't nourish my soul, that did the opposite. And I just hit that dark night of the soul so hard. And in the depths of that is when the soul transference happened. Um, so I think that probably answers your question. But like I said, it was really coming through clearly with the mission. And I was not, it's so interesting how you can flip that switch when the soul enters, because I was not someone that ever watched like Star Trek or Star Wars, or I didn't know any of the things I'm doing now. I didn't have any background in that. I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up Catholic. I was very quiet. I was very shy. I was very scared. I knew I had some kind of calling and some kind of connection, but the veil was really thick. And so it's interesting to see the difference. Um, once you become activated. And really, what people are doing, and I see this all the time, is they're almost having a higher version of themselves being walking in, like being activated as they go through their own healing process. And you may experience that yourself. It's like, whoa, I'm so much different than I was a year ago. It's almost like more of your true self integrating and coming in.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I love that you've shared that, Katie, because it then I was thinking as you were speaking there, or pondering rather, what your relationship was to the soul that was in this physical vessel before the transference.
Yeah. Again, there was contract, and we're from the same oversoul.
Of course, yeah. Oh, I
So
see. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah,
so we're very much, and it has to almost, for what we're, for the mission, the DNA had to be right. It had to be a
yeah,
specific match. And the soul, the spirit goes into the soul, and the soul comes in and animates the body, but it's got to be able to have, it can only attach to the right frequency, and the DNA holds the frequency. And
yeah.
when you ask what is the mission in terms of Mother Gaia, well, this is a big piece of it, because the mission is about bringing our connection back to the earth, back to our connection to our.
Okay,
Okay.
welcome back, everyone. Apologies for that. As some kind of, I'm down in my workspace, and unfortunately, the internet for the first time ever here decided to crash out. Maybe our conversation's too powerful for the internet down here. But Katie, we were talking about the elements, or rather, you were sharing your perspective on the elements and Mother Gaia.
Yeah, so bringing that into the healing practice is really critical for the work I'm doing. So in all of my healing sessions, we use all of the elements. We start with a breathing pattern, and there's usually we'll light a candle because we connect through the portal of the flame. After a session, I'll usually do a fire ceremony. At the end of each session, we do a water ceremony. So we've had water sitting with us the whole time, and we've charged it with the healing, and we honor it and we drink it. So again, the whole process honors all of these elements. This is a reactivation. This is a remembrance, because really what we're doing here for humanity, it's not so much that humanity needs all of this data dump of information. It's the opposite. They need to start releasing and letting go of all the old programming and bringing forth the remembrance of their divinity, the remembrance of their origin of their soul. Remembrance, this reclamation of innocence, of their purity of the heart, all of that comes through when we do these healing sessions and when we bring it together with all the elements combined. We're also healing Mother Gaia as we do that because we're part of her. And part of the mission here for many of us is also helping her process the trauma, helping her process the pain, because this is a false matrix system that we're in. This is, sorry about that. This is just, um, uh, this system that we're in is really diabolical. And so she's coming back to reclaim her children and to be reconnected. And there's a lot to process through that. So there are many of us here anchoring in that being that conduit for
Yeah.
process trauma.
Yeah. And I cannot agree with you more because as I deepen into my own remembrance, my own self connection, I feel that power of my connection with our mother planet on a deeper and deeper level than some of my sort of close inner circle. And I never used to think or really feel this, but some of my close inner circle used to say to me, you have the strongest earth energy in terms of grounding with the planet. And I never really understood it rather. But as time has gone on and I've deepened into my remembrance and self-connection, I feel that people like us who are having these kind of conversations are in a co-created, co-authored agreement with each other, with our mother planet, with our father sun, with our galactic mother, with our universal mother, to really be arbiters and instruments of change as we go from the closing of one era I can never get this right, era, epoch, and eon, but one age is closing and the other one is just beginning to open. So I would love to hear your perspective on that, Katie, because for hundreds of thousands of years, the human form has been subjugated. You can go back to the Draco Reptilians, the Anunnaki, the Atlanteans. Um, we have been dumbed down and dumbed down and dumbed down and dumbed down for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years. But it seems that we're now at a point, an inflection point, where that's finally about to completely and utterly break. We're about to break the shackles of that as the old age finishes and the new one starts. And I love what you shared there about the false matrix system. So from your perspective, what's the control and it's such a big question, but what's the suppression and control that we've been under for all this time? And what is that false matrix and how do we then begin to transcend it?
Yeah. So to really filter it down, what is the control system? It's an energy harvesting system. Okay. It is literally, I think the Matrix movie probably documents that the most accurate way of what's actually happening. Um, so how do we break free from that? First of all, it's awareness. That's the hardest part because we're brought up and we're programmed and we're conditioned through religious dogma and through all of these programs, mind control programs, these broadcasting to think a certain way. And that mentality doesn't allow for free thinking. Okay. And it disconnects us from our heart. It disassociates us because we start thinking we're this other identity and we're not. We're really who we are in our hearts. That's our true self. And that is the way out. So I talk a lot about the true self and the higher self because these are the instruments. This is what brings us. This is how we transcend the matrix. What's the difference between true self, higher self? They're essentially the same thing, but in the context of explaining how to transcend the matrix, I talk about the true self as the part of you that's within you. This is in your 3D physical makeup. And then I talk about the higher self as the part of you, that eternal part that is outside of space and time. Okay, so that part of you is able to see the whole playing field and they're connected. Okay, they're connected through the voice of the heart, the voice of the soul. So when you're able to detach from the matrix, detach from all of the social engineering and conditioning, and just get into your quiet space and know who you truly are, you're able to hear the truth. Okay, because the ego can't operate in silence. So if you're looking for truth, you have to get into that state of silence and that state of receptivity, which is part of the feminine energy that people don't understand. It's receptivity. You're not going to get the information that you want. You're not going to have the truth if you're constantly having mind chatter, or if you're constantly on social media, or if you're not having good energetic hygiene. Okay, we've got to make this part of our daily lives. Energetic clearing, energetic hygiene, grounding, connecting to the heart space. This needs to be done like we're brushing our teeth. And of course, we're not brought up that way. So no one knows that. No one knows any of these things, right? Because we don't teach them in school. We don't teach any of these important things. We don't learn how to activate ourselves beyond the five senses. The five senses are just a filter for all of the things we're able to intuit beyond that. So to get to that point, one has to break free of all the social conditioning and religious conditioning. And that's really hard to do because you have to go through intense cognitive dissonance and you have to look at yourself and reflect on all of the times when, oh my gosh, I wasn't acting from my heart space. That wasn't me. I was that was so superficial of me, or that's not my true self. And going through that process, you start peeling back your own veils. You start getting to the core of who you truly are. And that is how you transcend the matrix. And it's all about loving who you are in a healthy way, not in an egoic way. And that is the last thing the matrix wants us to do, or the dark side. They don't want us, they want us to have self loathing. They want us to think that all of the answers are outside of ourselves. They want us to think that we need religious saviors, or now the big thing is galactic saviors. Whatever it is, as long as it's external and as long as it's always in the future and never in the present. Okay. Being in the present moment transcends the matrix as well. And this is really hard because to be in the present moment, you have to accept your reality for where it is. And most people don't like where they are. They don't like their job. They may be in bad relationships. They may be in severe debt, and they don't want to accept that. They want to escape reality. But the only way to escape is to actually get in the present moment and take all of these things head on. That is how we transcend it. But that is really hard work. And everyone would rather go watch, galactic tabloids or something else that's going to distract and anything to take the attention away from you doing the own ascension process. It's an ascension that leads to the ascension. And you talked about the time frames and the different eras. And this is really a key point because part of this false matrix system is a time loop. Okay. The natural zodiac. We're not looking at the natural zodiac. We're looking at a construct. We're looking at this wheel of time, this celestial clock that was designed for us to keep looping, keep looping, keep looping. Um, so when these gates open, when we shift ages, okay, we're going from Pisces to Aquarius, the gates open. It's not so much that the age of Aquarius is going to save us, it's that this portal is opening for us to return to our point of origin. Okay. And that's what they don't want you to know. And that's why they mess up all the calendars. And that's why they don't want us to connect with the stars and the earth and the planets. So when these alignments happen, that's when you have a lot of, light workers or whatever, star seeds, way showers incarnating at that time to assist and guide humanity. It can't be forced. All you can do is hold the space like you do. You share the information. You lead through example. And then whoever is able to make that journey, that internal ascension journey, is going to be able to go back to their point of origin. What happens to those who don't? Well, there will be another time for them to experience 3D, but not, it won't be in this false matrix system. It will be in a pure matrix system that isn't inverted. Um, so that is, I hope I'm explaining this well. It's, it's obviously very complex, but the reason why this time is more important than ever is because not only are we switching ages, but we've done a whole cycle around the zodiac now. So the 26,000 year grand cycle is done, plus there's a 200 million year cycle of the suns, the network of suns that's coming to a close, and no one knows what to expect with that. So this is where if you're really able to ride that wave of ascension, you're going to come up and out of the construct altogether. So I probably should have prefaced this entire speech I just gave about the false matrix system with understanding that it is a construct. And this is why I really I think it's so important to understand universal laws, and I have a master class on this on my website. You have to understand the construct of the matrix, because that will give you the keys on what to work on, where to direct your energy for the alignment, for when the alignment happens. Okay, that's occulted wisdom. The dark side doesn't want us to know how the matrix works. They don't want us to know the structure, because once you understand the structure, you can focus your energy on freeing yourself from it and freeing and liberating others.
I love
Um,
how you've been sharing about being still and being in the moment and being present and connected to yourself. And right behind you, your little dog is showing us all exactly how to be in that space. I love that. Oh, bless. I love that. I'm like, wow, the best team. If there's ever a way to understand how to be present and in the moment, it's just look at an animal. Just look at an animal. They are so in the moment. But yeah, thanks to your little dog for that demonstration. I love that. And some of the things, there are a couple of things you said there, Katie, that I know some people who will be watching this will be leaning in and going, "Yeah, I feel that." But there was a couple of things where I think perhaps if you could share a bit more, it would help people to then actually be able to apply some of this. And the first thing is like some people will actually not know how to be still. So firstly, how do we get into that still space? And also, can you tell us a little bit more about what energetic hygiene is? Because I think that's really important.
it's so important. Getting into the still space is so critical, and you're right, because everyone says, "Oh no, I can't meditate. I can't do it, or I can't um I can't focus, I can't slow down." And okay, first of all, you've got to just break out of that mindset. Yes, you can. You're actually designed to do that. It's the false matrix structure that has programmed you and put so much overstimulation in your mind with everything that we're encountering all day long, especially with all of the social media, all of the noise. Okay, there's so much noise. So all you have to do to start is set that intention. Set the intention. I really highly recommend taking baby steps with it, because if you try to do too much, you're going to get frustrated and then you're going to give up. So I would just start with 1 minute a day. And maybe you don't even close your eyes. Maybe you're just going to time yourself for 1 minute and you're just going to be still. That's it. Or this would be ideal if you could spend just a few minutes getting your feet on the ground outside and imagine all of this static, this electromagnetic energy, because it's all excess. We have so much excess. This is why we can't concentrate, because we're being bombarded with remote frequency technology all the time. So visualize these frequencies coming down and being pulled into the earth. Visualize them being cleared from your body and dissolving into the earth. Okay, and that will help. And if you start doing these things on a consistent basis, you'll start to build your muscle for meditation. Um, consistency and discipline with this is really important. It's actually really important on the spiritual journey. And the New Age movement makes discipline and consistency like a dirty word because they don't want you to do it, because they want you to think everything's love and light and you can just say love and light,
So
like
true.
not really live it, you know? So it's like so
Yeah.
the biggest thing ever. So going down the spiritual journey is hard. There's going to be moments that are really uncomfortable, but that's when you grow, when you're in that uncomfortable moment. It also means you're going to do things that you don't necessarily want to do. Maybe you don't, I don't feel like meditating today. I don't feel like connecting right now. When you're able to break through and do it and just get through that, that's when you start having more advancement with your spirituality, with your growth, with your meditation. That's when you start getting those connections that you want. So, one of the laws, again, going back to the laws of the universe, this is a really key law that's been hidden. And humanity needs to understand this because the entire advertising and marketing arena is designed to make sure that we don't activate this law. It's the law of assimilation. And what this means is we're designed, our mind and our body is designed to accept change very, very slowly and incrementally. And if we try to make a change that's too drastic, everything kind of shuts down and we don't go back to trying to make the change, and it creates more of a negative effect. You see this the most at New Year's when people all of a sudden are going to go on an extreme diet, or they're going to go to the gym 5 days a week, and they start and they're like making these huge changes, and then within like a week, it's gone. Um, that's not practicing law of assimilation. Law of assimilation would break that down into teeny tiny little chunks so that you're making a 1% change every single day and inching your way there. And then you really are integrating that into your life. You're embodying it. It becomes a part of you. So you don't even think about it. It's using your subconscious the way it's supposed to be used, which is to, you don't have to process it anymore. It becomes easy. It becomes a part of who you are. So you're doing it automatically. So that is what I would say to start implementing into your life if you want to try to start meditating. And then for the energetic hygiene, this is huge too. This is literally like without clearing your field on a daily basis. I mean, this is like saying you've never brushed your teeth, right? And I know that sounds awful, and no one knows this. Again, we're not taught this. So how do you do that? What does that even mean? We have an auric field. We have a biofield around us. This is our immune system. This is what really all dis-ease starts in the biofield. It starts as an energy form, and then it grows and it gets heavier and denser, and then it becomes embodied. So we want to keep this field clean, and we want to keep it energized, and we want to keep it protected every day because it holds everything for us. So this is something else that I would start doing in increments. Um, Again, if you're meditating, you would want to go through, if you can do that grounding with the earth, that's huge. Another way that I love is keep like a little bowl of salt next to your sink. And every time you wash your hands, you're going to take a little bit of salt. Salt is absorbs negative energy. It's incredible, incredibly powerful. So wash your hands with the salt and visualize being under a pristine waterfall, and that all these layers of your biofield are being cleared and cleansed and washed. If you do that every time you wash your hands every day, that is wonderful. And that's easy to implement because you're washing your hands anyways. So if you can start trying to implement things of energetic hygiene throughout your day, doing things you're already doing, it's going to become easier and easier and easier. Do it every time you shower. Consciously put the intention to cleanse your biofield. Um, After you're done cleansing, you're going to want to visualize a bubble, like a frequency, a frequency shield around you of golden light, so that only the energies of the highest light, the highest love can come through and interact with you. And the more you do this, the more effective it is. It's not something you do once and then you're done and you never have to do it again. This is consistency builds it. It's consciousness, it's consistent consciousness that creates in this matrix system. That's how we co-create, is when we keep putting our consciousness into something over and over again, it builds density and then it manifests. So the more you do it, the more effective it is. Um, so those would be my recommendations for people. Those are really simple, and there's some really more high level advanced things you can do, but um, I think if you can just focus on doing those simple things and then start learning more about what interests you, because everyone's spiritual path is completely different. So, whatever pops into your mind with different meditations that you want to try, or yoga nidra. I have a woman I work with, and she's a yoga nidra specialist, and this is where you're in a meditative state and you're being guided along the lines of that awake asleep, um right in there in that sweet spot. So it helps you reprogram your subconscious. Really tapping into the subconscious is the key, because we operate the majority of our lives from the subconscious. So, that famous quote from Carl Jung, the goal is to make the subconscious conscious. That's what we need to be doing. We have People don't realize how much they are on autopilot,
Yeah.
how much um I forget the word I was going to use, but disassociated. So disassociated. Okay. Um and that's all, again, all about grounding into the present moment. When we're not in the present moment, we're disassociated, and you can't work on yourself, you can't be present, you can't clear your energy field, you can't be receptive if you're not in the present moment.
Yeah,
So
cannot agree more. And I tell you what, I'm so doing the salt thing. I never thought about doing that.
yeah.
When we finish, I'm popping around to my partner's house because she absolutely loves all of this as well. So I'm like, oh, guess what Katie suggested? So I'm gonna get some sea salt and put it in a little tub and beside the sink and start doing that. That's amazing. And one of the things that I always say to people as well, Katie, is when someone asks me a question like, how am I supposed to do some form of well, people say, how do I clear my mind? How do I start doing this? And I'll say, switch off the TV, stop watching the news, put down social media, put down Facebook, put down Snapchat, put down Twitter, X, whatever it is these days. But more than anything, switch off the television. Whatever you do, switch off the goddamn TV. Excuse my language, but honestly, I it was I did it by accident in 2006 when I was developing a property, and I say accident because it was like a full strip out and a full refurbishment, and I did a lot of the work myself. And as a result of that, I stripped everything, so there was no TV aerial at the time. Before, we didn't have cable or satellite or anything at the time. And I remember a few months later plugging everything back in, and within about 5 minutes, I'd switched the TV off again because I realized just how much it was numbing me out and poisoning me. So I think that's a big one for everyone. If you're seriously interested in it, is yeah, stop being programmed by media because it's designed to keep you small, frightened, afraid, and ultimately controllable and disassociated, exactly as you've said. It's such a good word. So one of the things that you mentioned that I feel is really, really important, and we mentioned off camera, Katie, was about the feminine energy that's coming in. And for the men who are listening to this, before you switch off and change channel, you need to listen to this more. We need to listen to this as men more than the ladies do. So tell us a bit about that.
Well, it is for both, but I really want to help men understand the feminine principle, because it's been so convoluted, and a lot of women are actually convoluting it. So it's very, very confusing. So I want to clarify it for everyone. Um, the feminine energy that's coming in, this is not about vomiting rainbows and unicorns and roses all over the place. Okay. It's not. I've been in some of these groups where, it's all about, get on your crystal unicorn and your rose pet. It's too much. It's too much. It's not. And that's fine. That has a time and a place, but that is actually not the true
Yeah.
feminine. The true feminine is wisdom. This applies to everyone. It's wisdom. It's more gender neutral than anything, but it serves as the energy force that brings in the wisdom, that activates the wisdom within. The feminine energy is about balance. She's taking the genders and she's balancing them. She's getting rid of these gender wars. Okay, that's what's happening. It's about the balance of the polarities because we're in a dual polarity construct. And the polarities are pulling us apart and dividing us. The feminine principle brings that back into balance, into fairness by implementing wisdom. And the third thing that the feminine principle is truth. We live in a world of deception. We live in the age of deception.
And
So,
inversion as well.
an inversion. Truth has been weaponized,
Yeah.
right? So, the feminine principle is bringing us back to that realm of absolute truth where our souls originated from. It's a welcoming home. Okay. And I think more men can relate to that more than a lot of the other overflowery things going on with the feminine, and that's wonderful. It is feminine. I love being feminine. I love that energy, but the true principle of this frequency that's coming back is about wisdom, balance, and truth, and it's also about beauty because this false inverted matrix doesn't wants disharmony, and harmony is beauty. So it's bringing that back, and then it's bringing back a frequency of love that we don't have on this planet. The love we have is transactional, it's conditional. Um, People feel like it needs to be earned. The love that's coming back from this mother, divine mother energy is uncontrollably, overwhelmingly healing. It's imagine someone knowing every single thing about you, everything about you, your deepest, darkest secrets, things you don't want anyone else to know, your bad habits, coming in, knowing all that, and loving you so much that you start crying, just embracing you, adoring you, saying, I love you so much. I love you for who you are. I want you to come home. We don't have that kind of love. And there's a lot of, unfortunately, there's a lot of dark feminine energy. The dark feminine energy is very manipulative. And there's a lot of martyrdom associated with that. Well, I do this for you and I do that for you, so you should love me. Or there's that energy. This is completely different. Now, the true mother holding everything, she holds the dark and the light. Okay, she holds the dark energy and the light energy, and that's why it's about balance, and that's why it's about unification. It's all about going back to that unified field in your heart where we all originate from. So that is the feminine energy, which has been left out of all of the religions because she's personified by Sophia in the Gnostic texts. And that's really the feminine Christ because Christ is actually has a feminine partner. They leave that out on purpose because of the power
Yeah.
that the female brings in and the womb energy. And this is that frequency that you hear, nothing can stop what's coming. This frequency can't be controlled because it's at a frequency of such high love that we don't have anything like it. It's going to collapse the false matrix, is what it's going to do. So.
Yeah, it is so beautiful. And I can relate to what you've shared because again, for men who are listening to this in particular, we all it's not about a masculine or a feminine in a gender sense. It's about realizing that because as you said, Katie, we live in a universe of duality, but the balance and the harmonization of that duality, much like, the Jedis in the Star Wars films, I think were a really good example of that, where they hold the dark, but they balance that by being in the light and facing the light, but they still hold the dark. And and every man has this balance of the feminine with the masculine as well naturally. And I remember it's happened about 3 or 4 times that I can remember in this last couple of years when I've been in a really deep, self-connected meditation with Christ in the feminine, so the Sophia energy of our mother planet. And people often say to me, well, what's the difference between Gaia and Sophia? And there's a guy I really respect, I heard explain this because I was a bit unsure myself until he explained this. And I felt that and I thought, yeah, that feel really feels right for me. It's very much like who we are in our human form is we are we're an immortal soul having a human experience. So the immortal soul is who we really are. But in my example, the ego character is Franco with you. It's Katie. And for anybody listening, well, whatever your name is in the ego character. And this person explained that it's very much the same for our planet, is that the true essence, the true soul of our planet is Mother Sophia in the central sun of her existence. But the outer personality, in other words, the outer ego, is Gaia. Now, some people may disagree with that, and I have no problem with that. But when I heard and felt that, I thought, yeah, that actually feels really true for me. And I was it's happened again about 3 or 4 times in this last couple of years or so when I've been in a really deep meditation and I've felt my awareness connect deep into the core of Mother Sophia. And I felt that unconditional, powerful, immense love where I've literally just burst into tears because I have felt a tiny degree of the pain that she's holding, carrying us and carrying what we're doing here, and how I don't want to use words that are going to upset people, but we're abusing her by digging into her and extracting minerals and stuff out of her without permission, out of co-creation, just from a really selfish, self-serving point of view. And then, of course, there's all the energetic, non-physical pain as well. And I felt just a tiny bit of the pain, but yet of Mother Sophia, yet felt so much love. It was just purely without condition. And I just sat there bawling my eyes out for like 10, 15 minutes, feeling into that. So, for any guy who's listening to that, I want you to, if you feel yourself resisting that, I want you to challenge yourself on that and feel into what Katie said and try that for yourself, going into meditation and connecting with the heart and soul of the planet, because it's so important that people like Katie shares her wisdom on this subject, because one of the things, it's a lovely lead into the next point that I think is really important we discussed, that we mentioned off camera, Katie, is anybody who's watching this channel will know that we are not alone in the universe, never have been, and it's utter, I won't say it, but BS to think, to even imagine that we are this planet of ours, right from her inception, has always had connections with multidimensional, interdimensional, extraterrestrial, ultra-terrestrial beings, always has done, always will do. And since the end of the Second World War, there's definitely been a shift in terms of what's going on in terms of technology that's been released to nefarious groups by nefarious off-world groups. When I'm talking about nefarious groups, I'm talking about the secret underground military projects, the commercial industrial complex as well, that we were warned about by President Eisenhower in his leaving address. And recently, I mean, people were ridiculed um, right up until very recent years for acknowledging anything to do with extraterrestrial life. But recently, it's completely gone 180, and now it's being promoted as a potential extraterrestrial threat. We have this, I forgot the name of it, that was doing the rounds last year. Now we've got Three Eye Atlas coming into the solar system, and there's a whole another story around that. And it feeds into what is we mentioned off camera as a disclosure war. So disclosure being the revealing of our connection and the fact that we are family with many, many, many different off-world species. So I would love to hear what you have to say about that, Katie.
Yeah, it's a, the ET connections are a really big part of who we are. And that information is very important. But the information from the true benevolent beings, what they're sharing is information on how to be human. It's not about glorifying contact, which is happening. People are becoming obsessed with some of these speakers who are contactees. And there's a lot of deception in these messages that are going on. So what we're seeing within the overall polarity wars of this construct is a disclosure. And this is a huge distraction in itself because it's pulling people apart, it's dividing people. I think a lot of this galactic distraction is part of the whole New Age psyop because it's disconnecting people from their true self again. It's putting it all on the ETs, it's putting it all on the external, and it's all these things that we can't control or we can really not validate anyways. It's almost like an escapism. Again, the true benevolent beings are not talking about all of these outer space technologies. They're talking about what we need to do as a humanity to take care of ourselves, to take care of our planet, to be responsible for ourselves. Okay, they're mentoring us to be the best humans we can be. And I think the disclosure, first of all, disclosure is happening all the time. So there's so much information out there. If people don't see it, it's because they're choosing not to. And there are some people that just won't see it. So if you're waiting for CNN to be disclosing the truth, you're going to be waiting a long time. Like, don't hold your breath. Keep moving on. Do what you need to do. Quite honestly, whether this disclosure comes through on a mass public scale shouldn't affect the work that you're doing internally anyways. So people who are so hung up on this and waiting for it, it's like, well, you work on you, okay? Because this is all going to work itself out. And I think the whole disclosure that should be happening is not so much about the ETs, while that's very important, and I talk a lot about this in my book. I think what's more important is to disclose the truth of the construct of our reality. I think it's more important for us to understand that this is a holographic interface for our souls to connect and share and co-create experiences. Because once we disclose that, once we get everyone understanding how that works, how this holographic, this nested holographic multidimensional reality actually interfaces with us, that's empowerment. I don't need to know about some alien race on the other side of the galaxy to know how to, that I just feel like a lot of this information is not relevant right now for what we need to do as a humanity for ascension to ascension. So that's kind of my take on some of this, these galactic conversations that are happening. And there's a really big push for this Star Trek future narrative that I keep hearing over and over, and it sounds like people are so like almost MK Ultra with it, like Star Trek future, we want this. And when you ask people, is that you? So you really want to go through this whole Earth experience, and then you want to go work on a ship? Okay, that's great if you do. That's your choice. And I'm not against technology at all. I think we use it in harmony with what we're doing, but we as a human species is not at the state where we're able to work at that level because we don't know who we are as a humanity yet. We haven't mastered that. We're not taking care of each other the way we need to be doing that. We're not taking responsibility of our planet yet. We've got to get this down first. Okay, otherwise we're skipping a huge step. And then we're going to go back to all the problems that we had in Atlantis. We're using technology without the soul, without the connection to the heart. So a lot of this Star Trek future narrative is based in transhumanism. Oh, I can get an implant in my head and talk to ETs? That's so cool. an implant in your head is transhumanism. We're not ready for that. We need to learn how to communicate telepathically on our own
Yeah.
before bringing in that technology.
Yeah, we're not only not ready for it, we actually don't need it. If we go back into ourselves, we have all these capacities and a million times more. And I'm going to touch on that when we finish this bit to close off, because you mentioned something on that earlier, which really grabbed my attention. But sorry, Karen, please carry on.
Oh yeah, no, I just say proceed with caution. And again, I'm not against the technology, and I know we are spacefaring and explorers, but there needs to be an order in which we evolve. And if we're not evolving together in the right order and we bring in technologies that we're not ready for because we haven't learned how to master it ourselves, we're going to be trapped. We're not there. We'll still be stuck in this system. And many people may want to do Star Trek on go and be in on a spaceship and live instead of ascension, instead of going home, they might want to go explore. Okay, go do that, but know that you're still in a construct. You're just in a higher level of it. You're just playing the game of duality at a higher level. So I just want people to be aware of that because I hear it being spit out from people without consciousness. It sounds like a program. And so it sounds like a transhumanism program is what I'm
Yeah.
saying. And ultimately, a lot of what we're experiencing our, is this matrix system really wanting humanity to consent to be assimilated. They always go by consent. They're always trying to trick us into consent. And one of those ways is with some of these technologies when we're not ready to use them. And it's not that again, med beds, this is wonderful, but we need we need to learn how to do these things on our own first. That's what we're designed for.
Yeah. And I was such a paid up member of the Star Trek Future until just over a year ago, because for me, it just made perfect sense. And then I heard someone speak about it in the terms that you've just described in a way that I'd not considered before, where it's basically you're basically just going for more of the same. Like we're playing spaceships and aliens out in the galaxy, and it's still conflict ultimately. Now, do you want to go out there and go fighting Draconians and Nibu Greys and whoever else is the perceived enemy out there, or would you rather integrate back into unity, back into your heart and soul, and go back into the all it is? And I was like, oh, it's no brainer. And I've never considered that until I heard someone say that. I'm like, zero resistance. I'm like, yeah, Star Trek. And as you say, though, for some people, that's the right part of their soul journey in terms of,
Mhm.
so I'm not knocking it, but I'm saying, just to reinforce what you said, Katie, we really need to think hard well, we don't think from the heart, but feel deeply on a heart level whether or not that's the right path for your soul. And I would just say to people who are aware of this, just ask your heart. Just say, heart, soul, essence, is this what's right for me right now in my next step? You'll get the answer before you finish asking the question. But it is really important to be aware that it's just more conflict because you're taking a fragmented and um, incomplete's not the right word, but um, not fully healed and integrated part of yourself back out into another arena of hierarchical conflict. And as you correctly pointed out, Katie, it's actually just a higher level of the matrix out there because it's not just existent on this planet, it's right through the galaxy and right through many dimensions and frequencies. And it's something that I've only really begun to feel and realize on a deep level recently, which has just reinforced for me even more why it's much more important for me and where I'm at in my journey to go really deep on the inner work and the inner harmony and integrate back into back into unity and be in that space um, of complete love, life, and integrated into a harmony of love, life, and light on the inside. Because again, I can't take an unhealed part of me. I'd rather stay with my mother planet. and do the work on the inside, and then go back into the all it is when this life was finished. And the final part that I wanted to pick up on, I mean, I feel like we've barely got started, but we're sort of coming up to time. Is one thing you said at the beginning, which I think many people would be fascinated about. I know I certainly am. Is you mentioned about us working on activating the supernatural ability of our souls. What's that? And how does that help us and help our planet and help the realm in general?
Yeah, this is all about purification. It's about distillation of the self. It's about going through that cleansing process of releasing all of those programs and really being able to see the ego for what it is. Doesn't mean we get rid of the ego. We have it while we're here, but being able to see it. And through this process, once you start unveiling your truth, you're taking these layers off your soul of things that aren't yours. They're things, they're projections other people put on you. Okay. When you're able to really be in contact with your soul, which there's a part of it that's within you, but of course we're all connected and there's a larger part. But we're fractal, and we're a fractal of the entire universe. It's the universal law. It's an absolute. You have that all within. So you have everything you need. And we are so limited to these five senses. So when you start activating and operating from the sense of a universal perspective, being connected to where your soul originates from, you're activating supernatural abilities. Other senses, you're speaking telepathic words. You're able to use time alchemy. You're able to heal times in the past. You're able to visit times in the past. You're able to get information from past lives. You're able to get glimpses of the future. You're able to have conversations with other souls who are no longer incarnate in a body. So when people get excited that someone's a psychic or a medium, we all are. We all have that ability. It's just a matter of peeling the layers back and letting your true self come through. And there's another really important piece to this, because everyone's so focused on the pineal. Well, they'll say, well, I just need to decalcify my pineal. That is so important. Okay, this does help with visualization, but it's limited. And I want people to understand that. And I also want people to understand that if you're if you're seeing a psychic and they're seeing everything through their third eye, if their heart space is not clear, those visions are going to be distorted. The information they're interpreting is going to be distorted. So what I recommend is with this activation, when you're peeling back the layers, you're doing it from the voice of your heart space. This vortex, this is a stargate. This is where we connect. It's the heart. It's through the heart. So that is critical. If you don't know where to start with your heart and start figuring out where the walls of your heart are, because we've all had heartbreak on multiple levels, and it's starting to mend those heartbreaks, and being receptive to the universal energy that's going to help open that stargate for you so that you can activate your own supernatural abilities. So that's kind of what I meant by that, if that helps. And there's more. I have so much more on that. And if people want to know more, I go through a lot of detail in my Sacred Mysteries monthly classes. In fact, the one this month I'm offering for free because it's such important information, and it's all about the matrix. It's about the origin of the original matrix, origin and genesis of the false matrix system, how to get out, how the control systems operate, how they use the central nervous system, how they use the tree of life. I go through all of this, and I go through everything I talked about today in much more detail in all of those classes you can find on my website. So if you want more mechanics and process, I have that. And I think it's so important because there's so many people that are sharing these broad love and light messages, but they never ground it into reality. There's no application. And that application is everything. Otherwise, if you can't use the knowledge, if you can't use the wisdom, then it doesn't do anything. It won't create any kind of change or transformation. And that's what we're all trying to do here. Those of us that are incarnate specifically to um, go through this ascension process. So having the application is really, really key, and not just getting a data dump. It's being able to filter out the information, what's important, what's applicable, and then implement it, embody it.
Yeah, yeah, such a beautiful answer. I love that. But unfortunately, we're almost out of time. I feel like this could be like a whole
I
one day
know.
conversation. There's just so much wonderful information and wisdom that you have, Katie. But before we close off, I have three quick fire questions for you. And the first one is, what are you most excited about right now?
Oh, I'm excited for humanity to realize who they are.
Love that. Love that. Secondly, imagine you probably can imagine this better than most people, but imagine you've just got into a time machine. You hear the doors close, you hear yourself moving through time and space, and then it stops, the doors open, and there is 12-year-old you in front of you. What one piece of information would you give that young girl?
Oh gosh, I would say trust yourself, because I I had a connection to my heart space, and I had such low self-confidence that I would compromise it in order to fit in. And not so much in a really bad way, but I didn't honor myself. And I was scared to, because I thought very deeply. I thought a lot. I saw the world differently, and I was scared to ask the questions I had. And I wish I had had more confidence in honoring the voice of my heart.
Yeah, beautiful. And finally, gosh, what is the final question? What's the number one thing from your perspective right now? What's the number one thing that's wrong with the world, and what one thing would you do to solve it?
I think it's truth. I think it all comes down to truth. It's all the the lies layered within lies, wrapped in truth and marketed and packaged out there for people to. And I know a lot of people will say, well, it should be love. You can't have love without truth. Truth comes first. So the problem with our world is we don't know truth. We don't know the truth of our origins. We don't know the truth of our planet. We don't know the truth of the construct of the reality that we're actually in and how to get out of it. We don't know the truth of what really happens after death, and we never talk about it, and we should. There are all these raw truths that need to come out, and the problem is they're uncomfortable truths and they're inconvenient truths. So the biggest problem is people say they want truth, and then they hear it and well, that doesn't go along with my story, so I'm gonna, shove it over here. So it's being receptive to the truth and being open-minded enough to at least just entertain other thoughts and concepts about our reality, for to expand your perception and to actually understand the truth of this reality.
That's really powerful. And finally, then, Katie, where can people? I will put this in the show notes, of course, but tell us a bit more about the work that you offer and where people can find you.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything is on earthbishop.com. I have all my healing services on there. I have all my classes on there. And like I said, the Matrix Mysteries class I'm doing next Thursday, if you click on that and type in red pill in all caps, the discount code, you'll get it for free. I'm putting this out there for free because it's such important information and I want everyone to have it. And you'll get the recording if you can't be there live. But if the information that I said today resonates and you want more details, go to the Sacred Mysteries tab and you'll see all of the classes. And in each class, I make sure that we do some kind of process together where we we clear our field, we energize our field, and we protect it. And you learn a skill. Like you'll learn how to do your own soul retrieval. You'll learn how to use time alchemy. So you'll actually be applying it at the end of class. We do like a little workshop. So you'll get all the details on how to do, how I have all this information, what it means, all the mechanics, and then you'll actually get to apply some of it in class as well.
Brilliant. Oh, that's amazing. And I would highly encourage everybody to take Katie up on that. I think I certainly will be. Well, we're out of time. To everybody watching, as always, thanks ever so much for sticking with us until the end. Please do subscribe, comment, like, and share this episode. Katie's shared so much, and I feel like, there's so much more we could have dived into. But again, I really appreciate your support, and it helps to get the wisdom of the great guests on Superliminal out to other people who are awakening like yourself who could really benefit from it. So thank you to everyone who's watching. And finally, thank you, Katie, ever so much for being on Superliminal. I've enjoyed this so much, and I'm really, really looking forward to having you back on again in the future. So thanks a million.
Thank you, Franco.
Okay, I'll see you next time, everyone. Bye for now.